Welcome to this episode of the Smart Leaders Sell podcast. I'm Jessica Lorimer, sales coach and leadership expert, and I am really excited to dig down into today's episode. Hey, podsters. Can I change that now? Is it like poddies, podsters? I just like the idea of us having a collective name. And some days that makes me really happy. And today is one of those days. I have been hinting for a couple of months now on the podcast that I'm making some changes over here at Smart Leaders Sell HQ. Sounds so fancy. Every time I say it, it sounds even fancier. And one of those things that I'm going to be changing up is the podcast. Shock, horror, oh my God, gasp. If I could have done all of those in reactions, I totally would have done. But the good news is it is all good changes. And I want to walk through what that looks like today. And I want to explain some of the reasons that I've done things differently so that you guys ultimately can get a really good feel for what we're going to be changing up, what we're going to be doing differently, why it's going to be happening, and why you should be able to feel free to, at any point in your business, change things that you feel aren't serving you anymore or aren't working in the way that you want them to work. So that's kind of where we are for today. We're going to do some exploration. It's all in real time. So you guys are going to be coming along with me on the journey. But let's really start with where we actually are. Okay. So I've had this podcast. I've been the proud hostess of this podcast since September 2017. And in the last year and a bit, I've seen so many changes in the online space. And some of those changes have made me really happy. And some of them have honestly just made me feel gross about the market that I operate in. And we've talked about this on the podcast. Like we've had these honest conversations. And one of the things last year that I started to explore was this idea of like constant content, the social media feed, this idea of like information overload and overwhelm. And I decided I wanted to combat it. And you're going to hear this as I say it, right? I decided I wanted to combat it by coming away from social media, which was a complete win, FYI, and also by creating more content in the form of my podcast. I decided to take my podcast to 3 episodes a week. And can you hear that? Like, can you just hear that for a second? I decided there's a problem in the industry with creating tons of content for people to consume. And I was fed up of information overwhelm. So I took myself off social media and then I created more content. I felt like I became part of the problem. And I noticed this when people were like, oh my goodness, Jess, I haven't had a chance to listen to Wednesday's episode yet. And, I'm still behind on like last week's and I need to catch up. I don't want people to feel like that about the podcast, right? I want people to be excited and they're like, oh my God, it's Monday and I'm going to get this really cool gem from Jess in my earbuds and I'm going to learn something awesome about sales and about taking my business to the next level. And for me, I was kind of playing around with this and I was doing some talking and, my podcast producer, Scott, amazing. He said to me, Jess, your content is kind of changing. And it is, right? My messaging has been changing and my business has been changing. And it turns out, weirdly enough, I'm not the same person I was in 2017. I know. How did you guess? And for me, that's been quite hard because obviously, my business is at a point where I'm ready to take another step towards more rapid growth. And that's always a challenging place to be because it brings up these areas that perhaps we don't talk about so often, or we don't talk about at what's perceived to be a higher level. And that's why I'm talking about it today. So this is where we are. I decided I was going to take the podcast 3 episodes a week because I was really enjoying it. I was really enjoying creating these podcast episodes. We get great feedback. People get really amped by them. But I felt like I was contributing to this constant content creation overwhelm and overload. And, you know, I didn't feel like that was positive. So I've done it for a few months. And as I always preach to you guys, do it for 3 months, see how you feel. So we started in December, it's now March. And I'm kind of like, you know what? That didn't scratch the itch that I had. That's an awful phrase, isn't it? Scratch the itch. But it didn't scratch the itch that I had, which was ultimately to reduce the content consumption overwhelm that most people find themselves in, and to put people into action. And so I've been playing with this idea in my head for, you know, months. I've been trying to feel into it and work out why, and I couldn't put my finger on it. And then, in true Jess fashion, I had a few glasses of wine, and I sat down after a coaching call with one of my new coaches, and I thought about what I really wanted. I was like, what do I really want from my business this year? You know, we all know that I don't plan further ahead because it feels too big for me to plan further ahead. And so I sat there and I was like, well, what do I want to do for the next 6 months? What do I want to do for the next 9 months? What do I want to do for the next 12 months? And I'd been to a group event, a group mastermind event, and I was listening to what people were saying there, and I was like, my business changed and I didn't even realize. How funny is that? And actually what people have been hiring me for a lot over the last few months is because they want to go to a next revenue level. And I was feeling this weird disconnect because the things you need to get to 100K are very different from the things you need to get to 250K or 500K or 750K or 1 million or 5 million. And what I realized that I'd been doing was I'd had this podcast and I'd been kind of like, I'm going to put all of it in there. You know, I'm going to put the stuff in that works for people who are pre 100K, and I'm going to put stuff in for the people who are post 250K, and I'm going to put the stuff in there for the, you know, 7-figure people, and they'll be fine. And I realized that I had broken, in doing that, one of my cardinal rules around building your business, which is you can have multiple ideal client avatars, but you can't try and do everything for everyone, right? You have to master one, move on, master one, move on. And I hadn't done that with the podcast because I'm so attached to the podcast. I love it. I love recording it. I love, you know, for me, it feels like we're sat here having a cup of tea every week, and I didn't want to lose that. And then I kind of thought about, am I actually, though, being of best service? And that was a really interesting question to ask myself. So after I looked at, you know, what do I actually want from the business? And I was like, well, actually, you know, I want less content overwhelm, less consumption. I want interesting conversations that are held at the right level for every person so they feel involved. Then I asked myself about the current podcast and is it, you know, is it of service? Is it doing the right stuff? And I was like, oh, yes, it is. In some degree, it's talking to the right people, but it's not always talking to them at the right time. And it's not always giving just them the right information that they exactly need, because I'm trying to cater for all the interesting conversations I want to have and all the people. And that doesn't work. And it's not fair on listeners. And it's also, it's kind of not fair on me either. And I don't know, do I get to admit that without, like, is that a really first world problem? But it isn't. And so I started having this like niggling, like, oh, well, you know, I need to be looking at what I want. I need to be doing the things I want. And also I need to be looking at whether I'm of service. And then I was like, well, okay, so with this information I have, like, how do I do that? And so I decided, okay, easy, job done. I'm just going to set up 2 podcasts. And I was like, right, okay, I'm going to set up 2 podcasts. And so I explored this idea and I was like, okay, podcast 1, Smartly to Sell podcast, that's going to stay like this. And then podcast 2 is going to look like this, and da-da-da-da. And then I thought, practicality, right? And I was like, oh, actually, if I create 2 podcasts, then how many episodes am I going to have to record a month? And how much time is that going to take me on the content front? And what's that going to look like? And, it's actually sometimes quite a squeeze to fit things in as it is. Or I already have like 1 whole week of content creation every month. And can you imagine if I had to record another 4 episodes? And then I breathed a little bit and stepped back and looked at, okay, so what's the ideal, mutually beneficial, win-win scenario that I can come up with here for both my poddies and for me and for future Smart Leaders Sell fans. And so I decided, okay, this is the plan. I am going to continue running the Smart Leaders Sell podcast in all of its amazing forms. I'm going to continue having the awesome guests on, because I think that actually it's really cool to have interesting conversations with interesting people who inspire and motivate us to do better, to play bigger, to be more us in our businesses. So that's going to stay. And I'm going to stick with the Monday solo episodes because I like being able to teach how to, right? I like being able to give people something actionable that they can take away and know that they can implement into their business immediately. But I'm going to remove the Wednesday episodes effective end of March. Okay, so after March, there will be no further 10-minute, let's be honest, 20-minute Wednesday episodes. And there are a couple of reasons for that. One is that the Wednesday episodes were getting a little bit more edgy in terms of content. We were exploring some different themes, and it's really hard to do that in 10 minutes. Yeah, 10 minutes just wasn't enough for some of the things that I wanted to express. And the second thing was that actually I wanted the podcast to be more useful for the right people. So what I'm going to do, and this may or may not be a popular decision, but I figure it makes it easy to understand what you should be listening to. If you're listening to the Smart Leaders Sell podcast, as in this one, I just thought I'd clarify that. This one that you're currently listening to, you need to be earning less than 100K a year. Okay? So if you are listening to this and you are earning less than 100K a year, you are in the right place. Yay! And it will continue to serve you at that level. And the job of this podcast is going to be to help you hit that 100K mark. Right? That's what this podcast is going to do. So everything that I talk about on this podcast is going to be designed to be actionable, to be practical, to help you get to 6 figures, which I think is a win, right? So it's still going to be sales strategy. It's still going to be Monday solo episode. Still going to be interesting conversations on Friday. Like everything is going to be designed to help you hit that 6-figure mark, because I think that's really important. And then there are a few of you who are listening who are already making 100K and you're looking to go further in your business. And I have defined this by revenue because I'm a sales coach. You don't have to agree. I'm kind of anticipating that some people will say, but Jess, I don't want to get to 100K, and that's fine. You can still listen to the podcast even if you want to make 25K or 50K or whatever. But for me, I had to define this by a number because I needed to look at, well, what are the problems that I need to be solving with this content so it's not just something else to consume, and that it's something that you can actually be actioning and using and getting value from. So if you are making more than $100,000 or pounds a year, I'm not going to discriminate against currency, and you are looking to hit the 7-figure mark, and that's your aim, whether it's that you want to hit it tomorrow or you want to hit it in 12 months or 24 months, whatever that looks like, then you are going to want to listen to my new podcast that we are launching in a month's time. All right. So mid-April, I'm going to be launching a second show, and it's going to be specifically for anyone who is making 6 figures already and who is looking to get to 7. And it's going to be called the 7-Figure Success Podcast. All right. It will be on iTunes. It's going to be on Stitcher. It's going to be on Podbean. It's going to be pretty much everywhere that this one is. And the purpose behind that podcast is going to be very specifically for people who are already at 6 figures, who want to have a different conversation about getting to that 7-figure mark, because there are very different problems involved. Problems like scaling, hiring, delegating, outsourcing, to host or to not host big events, high-level mentorship and what that really means and looks like and feels like, that actually are not going to best serve people who aren't there yet. Because and this is the biggest reason that I've done this. It's not because I'm like, oh, well, it's just really easy for me to chunk down my market, even though, let's be honest, it will make life marginally easier. But actually, it's because one of the things that I kept remembering was that one of the hardest bits for me during my whole journey of running my business and getting to the level of success that I have was that sometimes I would be involved, I would be buying things that were too advanced for me. I would be involved in conversations that were just too much. And I would look at those people and be like, oh my God, first world problems. Like, oh, you earn too much money. How is that an issue? Or, oh my goodness, you have this team of 15 people to do everything that you could possibly want. Like, how could you have a problem? And it made me feel resentful, and it made me feel uncomfortable. And most importantly, and most awfully, it made me feel like I was failing. And that's not what I want to create, right? I don't want to create a culture on my podcast of people who are like, oh, Jess had this conversation this week and I didn't really get it, so I must be failing, so I'm going to go and listen to something else that's better for me. Instead, what I want to do is create a culture of, oh my God, this is great. I'm going to listen to this podcast until I hit 100K. And when I hit 100K, I'm just going to switch over to the next podcast and I'm going to listen to the stuff there that's going to help me get to that level. Because that's easier for you. It's easier for me. And actually, it gives you something. I don't know whether this is going to sound condescending, so I'm going to say it and you're going to know that I don't mean it in a condescending way, but it's going to give you something to strive for. And that's what I always really wanted. I wanted to set goals and I wanted to achieve goals and I wanted to be that SWAT at the top of the class. It's like, yay, I made it. I get to go to the next podcast level. Oh my God. And that's what I want to do. That's what I want to promote, is that feeling of achievement of, yay, now I get content that is going to meet my exact needs on this journey wherever I am. And I'm always going to feel like I'm learning, but I'm not going to feel like the dunce. I'm not going to feel like the failure. I'm not going to feel resentful of any of the topics, because they're always going to be things that are relatable to me. And that's really important. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to move the podcast, shift it slightly. So hopefully you'll all be staying on the journey anyway, in some capacity, whether you listen to the new podcast or whether you listen to this one, or even if you listen to both. You never know. You might think, actually, there's an episode or two that I want to keep checking out, right? But that's going to launch in the middle of next month, and I'm really excited about it, and I will be talking about it and letting you guys know what it looks like, and I'll be, referencing things and all that good stuff as it happens. But I also wanted to share the reality behind the scenes, what this actually looks and feels like, because I think sometimes people make these big decisions. We get these business gurus, they make these huge, big business decisions, and we're like, but why did they do that? That seems like a really stupid move, or, it seems really unfair that they can just do that. And for me, this has been months in the making. It's not a decision I took lightly, and it's something that I'd made this decision about not wanting to contribute to this content creation culture, and then I suddenly had, and that made me feel like I was out of integrity, and that made me feel a bit gross. Nobody wants to be out of integrity, right? And I couldn't really shake it, and so when I started looking inward and I was looking for this clarity on, well, where do I go next? Because all I want to do is create this amazing content that's going to really help my people, and I don't really know why I feel a bit about it. It was like walking through fog. I wanted somebody to hand me the answers. I wanted somebody to go, oh, Jess, well, you should just do this. And, I sat there and I had conversations with my amazing coach. I had conversations with some people I'm masterminding with. I had conversations with my current communities, my my membership, my masterminders. I had these conversations and it just kept eating away. And I was like, oh, and then I asked myself the questions we talked about earlier and I figured out the solution. But then I went through this period of being not scared to say it, but I kind of felt a little bit of grief around what I thought I might lose. And it felt like, well, and anyone who's ever niched down will know exactly this feeling, right? You think, oh my God, well, if I niche down, or if I do this, or if I separate it like that, or however the line is drawn, then people will feel like they're left behind. And I really didn't want to leave my community behind, for a whole bunch of reasons. Firstly, because you're all great. Secondly, because I love what I do on this podcast. And I love what I do with everybody at this level in their business, at this, wanting to make 100K level. And so it's really hard for me, really hard. And I didn't kind of want to tell people that, because that can make us look weak, right? And so it was an odd feeling, and I just wanted somebody to tell me what to do and to make it safe, to make it better. And then I kind of thought about it and I was like, wow, what do I teach people? Because, sometimes the best advice from experts comes from the experts we are. And I am, albeit sometimes unwillingly, an expert in building businesses. And I thought, well, what would I tell a client to do? And that's when it hit me that, I would always tell a client that when you niche down, you don't say goodbye to people. You encourage people to step up to where you're going, and that's hard, because sometimes people will self-filter. When you niche down, what you're really saying is, this is the area of laser focus that I'm going to take so that I can best serve you. And if you are somebody who really wants to laser focus in on hitting that goal, then I am going to be the best person for you to spend time with. And I'm going to create amazing content for you. And we're all going to love it and have a party. And you encourage those people to step into that laser beam with you. And the people who perhaps don't need that laser beam of focus right now, well, they stay on the sidelines, they dip in and out, they take action sporadically, because they don't need what you have right now. But guess what? There are other people on the sidelines who are like, oh my God, that laser beam is the exact thing that I have always wanted. And I really need that. I want to stand for that. And I'm going to go and join in. And so you might say, a temporary goodbye to some people. They also might come back when they're ready to focus their laser beam. I'm really into this analogy now that I've got it. But they also might come back when they're ready to focus their laser beam in that direction. But you also give yourself the ability to talk to so many more people and be so much more impactful when you are decisive about what you can offer, because it's clear, because it's easy to understand, because it resonates with people. You're talking to one person at a time, solving one problem at a time, through one medium at a time. And that is so much more relaxing for you as a business owner, and it's so much more relaxing for them as a client, because they know they're getting the very best of what you have to offer in whatever capacity that is. And so that's why I made the decision, and it was scary and it was weird and it was horrible. I'm the sales coach who has effectively, for the last 4 or 5 years that I've been in business, I've always been very transparent about numbers and talking about money and things like that, but I've never categorized that way, because for me, it was one of those things where I didn't want people to feel less than about, oh, well, I'm not making 7 figures, so, I'm excluded, or I'm not making 250K, so I'm excluded, or I'm not making 10K, so I'm excluded. But one of the realizations, and hopefully you guys are sticking with me and not thinking, oh, Jess, this is awful drivel. This is such self-indulgent drivel. But, one of the realizations I had was that actually I want to give people something to strive for. I want to give people achievable goals that make them feel inspired and motivated, like at any level. And so it's much easier to be like, yeah, sure, aim for 100K. There is everything to be gained for aiming for that figure. You can be one of the people who is able to generate 6 figures in their business, have that lifestyle they want, know that they are financially secure and stable, and build a life like that, build a team to support you. Or you can be somebody who has mastered that, and you can be aiming for 7 figures, and you can be navigating the slightly challenging waters of scaling and launch changes and challenges and hiring challenges and delegation and business models and how that changes, and your messaging, how that changes over time. And for me, that's kind of more aspirational anyway. It's more motivational. I'd rather know where I'm supposed to be going. I'd rather have a roadmap to where I'm supposed to be going than sometimes feeling like I'm not hitting the mark. Because there's nothing that turns me off quicker than feeling like I didn't get it, right? So that's what I'm doing. That's where the podcast is going. That's how the feeling was around changing it. Clarity is a really murky thing, and it's really hard to get. And if you're waiting for somebody to tell you how it's going to work or what's going to happen or exactly how it's going to look, it's not going to happen. Only you can give yourself clarity. And most importantly, like when you have that clarity, only you can take action on it. Only you really have that power to decide what you want to do with it. Once you know where you want to go and how that's going to look for you, you literally are the only person who can go out and take the action, who can craft the message, who can sell the products and programs and services at that level that you are looking for. And whilst that's an incredibly scary thing, and whilst it doesn't come overnight, I also think it's incredibly empowering, because once you have that like awesome adrenaline rush high of that instantaneous moment where, I don't know, it's all poetic, isn't it? It's like 60 seconds of just immediate, oh my goodness, suddenly I see and I understand, and I can see how this idea is going to be bigger than I ever thought it could be. And I can see and feel exactly what it's going to be like when I get there. And I know that it's possible now. And there's no feeling like it. There just isn't. And it's addictive, but it takes time. It takes time to work through. So if you are going through anything right now where you think, I'm just not clear and I just can't work out why it feels off, and I don't know, maybe your revenue is plateauing, maybe your messaging feels tired or feels wonky, or you're like, I'm just so bored of saying all this stuff again. Go back to basics. Go back to clarity. Do I still want to be working with the same people? Do I want to still be earning the same amount of money? Is it time to set a new goal? Is it time to strive for something different? Is there anything else I would rather be doing? Is there anything that I would rather remove from my business? What would make me happy? Those are the questions you want to start asking yourself in order to get that clarity and really be introspective and unafraid to be introspective about it, because it's so, so worth it on the other side. Okay, that is me wrapping up almost the final Monday episode of March 2019. How exciting is this? I cannot believe that we are end of March already. So just remember, we have one final Wednesday episode for March, which will be aired Wednesday, 27th of March. And then we will not be doing any further Wednesday Smart Leaders Sell podcast episodes. Oh my God, I'm so excited. Also a little bit terrified. So we won't be doing any more past Wednesday, 27th of March. But if you are somebody who is interested in the new podcast and you are thinking that you may want to take a listen because you are currently at the 7-figure mark and you want to, the 6-figure mark, sorry, and you want to go to 7, make sure that you are following me on Instagram. That is where I'm going to be announcing the date, the podcast launch date this week. Okay, so it will be coming out this week. We're going to be announcing the podcast launch day. I'm going to be showing you the behind the scenes of the artwork. I'm going to be talking about some of the topics that are coming up. So it's all going to be happening over on Instagram at Jess_Lorimer over on Instagram. All right, so make sure that you keep your eyes and ears peeled for that, and make sure that if you are sticking with us on the Smart Leader Sell podcast, that you are super excited for April episodes, because it's all about getting to 100K, baby. We're about to have a blast. I've got so much planned to help you really hit that 6-figure goal this year. I'm so excited. I'm really pumped about it. I've got strategies galore to be sharing with you. So make sure that you stick it in your earbuds if you are looking to get to 6 figures this year or next year, whenever you want year. But make sure you stick with it if you're looking out for those strategies, those how-tos, formulas, and the rest that are going to take you to 6 figures in 2019 or your business future. Have an awesome week. If you have any feedback, then make sure you hit me up on Instagram, or you can always email me, jessica@jessicalorimer.com, if you want to email and let me know what you thought of today's episode, or whether or not you're going through a particularly soupy, foggy clarity period in your business. I'll speak to you soon. Have a great week. I'll see you in our final Wednesday episode on Wednesday, 27th of March. And then it's going to be 100K, aiming for all the strategies, making it happen in April. See you then.